Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, everybody. Happy Tuesday and happy 2/22/22. My name is Dave Ragals. I am the Senior Director of Accounts here at MessageGears. We are a customer marketing platform. We work with some of the largest brands in the world, and very excited to have everybody here, and really excited to have my guests, Richard and Jess. I'm going to let them do some brief introductions. Richard, do you want to go first?
Sure. So first off, thanks for having me. So I'm Richard Flores. I lead up our cross-channel platforms group at Ansira. We're one of the largest independent global marketing technology firms. We specialize in working with our clients to create seamless customer experiences across a distributed ecosystem of technology and locations. So again, thanks for having me and looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. And I'm Jess Filipovic. I'm a Director of Customer Success at Phrasee. Phrasee is an AI-powered SaaS platform that enhances customer experiences through brand language optimization. So we do this across all digital channels, including email, SMS, push notifications, social, and web. And our platform is utilized by some of the world's leading B2C brands, including Farfetch, Groupon, Party City, and Walgreens, to name a few.
Great. So thanks, everybody. And thanks again to all of our guests. We still have a few more folks showing up as we're going. This is great. Looks like we have a wonderful turnout. A couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll dive into the content. First, if you have any questions along the way, please use the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. And feel free to ask us anything that's on your mind, and we will get to questions either in real time as they apply to what we're talking about, or we'll get to some questions here at the end. And any questions that we're not able to get to, we will certainly follow up with you afterwards. But before we begin, I want to launch a quick poll and just get an idea as to what brought everybody here to the webinar today. Are you new to SMS? Are you using it, but you're unhappy with how it's currently going? Do you need a new strategy? Or do you just want to get a better sense of how other brands are leveraging SMS? So we're going to give about 30 seconds here so that I don't have to just kill time talking randomly for too long. And we'll see what is on everybody's mind, and then we will get started. So looks like wow, almost 2/3 really just want to hear how other brands are leveraging SMS. That's great. We love it when our customers want to get a better sense as to how other brands in this space are leveraging various marketing channels. We feel it's a great way to learn and for everyone to grow. But we have a quarter here who are new to SMS, so we hope to help get you over that hump and teach you what you need to know in order to get started. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And thanks, everybody. And now let's get to what brought you all here and have some great conversation. So Richard, I'm going to start with you, and I'd love to get a sense from you. In what sorts of campaigns do you see brands have the most success with SMS?
So there's really a couple that come to mind. I think SMS is somewhat of a gateway channel to some extent. The ability to communicate to customers and an ability to get information that could be leveraged in other channels. So you think, following up with a visit, asking them how it went, what's your email address, what are other mechanisms that we can communicate with you. I've seen customers had a lot of success building out customer profiles, leveraging, like I said, SMS is somewhat of a gateway kind of channel. And then secondly, I think timeliness is key, right? Most, if not everyone, has a mobile device on hand at all times, and being relevant in the moment, whether, like I said, it's a post-visit or a preemptive message about an upcoming appointment, all those are real positive and powerful ways of leveraging the SMS channel, specifically around kind of, like I said, the timeliness of the channel.
That's great. Thanks. Jess, anything you'd want to add to that in terms of specific types of campaigns or strategies where you've seen SMS be the most successful?
Yeah, sure. Definitely aligned in terms of the relevancy. I would also say anytime you could be personalized to your customers. So think, if you're doing a follow-up from a promotional email and you're sending that promotion via SMS as well, a personalized link that has that code embedded in a link, you're taking all the effort away and just allowing customers to be able to click through, purchase, or take that next step really easily. Abandoned cart, that's something we typically see in email, and that has moved a lot over to SMS as well. And not only, brands are taking it one step further. Not only are you saying, hey, you have, this item that you've abandoned, and driving them straight there, but they could also let you know, this item's now on sale, or this is back in stock, and you get an additional discount. So it's a really great way of having a personalized message to your customers, allowing them to take action really quickly.
And along the lines of the personalization, Jess, I'm sure you have a very unique perspective coming from Phrasee and what you guys do. How does the personalizing the language, specifically the messaging, differ in SMS, even from email?
Absolutely. I think one of the challenges that brands face is, when you're sending an SMS message, you have a character count limit. And often brands start stripping their brand voice out of that message because they're just trying to get that message through. And that's the last thing that we want a brand to do. A brand should always sound like themselves, be authentic. So what Phrasee can do, when we build out language models for SMS, we make sure all language is still within brand guidelines, following any tone of voice documentation, allowing emojis where it's relevant and makes sense for the brand that sounds like them. So I would say being authentic and making sure that the copy is relevant, that sounds like you, and that's what's going to connect with your customers, and adds that level of personalization.
It's great. Richard, there's two sort of large buckets that we talk about a lot in respect to SMS. There's the transactional and more of the promotional marketing messaging. What sorts of advantages do you see for SMS in each of those for your customers?
Well, I think it goes without saying the ability to communicate in yet another channel, right? So whether it's an outbound promotion that you're supporting, or in response to a transaction or an upcoming transaction, it gives the brand the ability to speak to a consumer in a different light than would maybe be in an email or push or mobile display, et cetera. But I think going back to what Jess said on the personalization is key, right? While you don't need to abandon or let the continuity of the brand diminish, being personalized in that message, whether it's in how you speak or in the links that you provide, that being personalized to the individual, maintaining the conversation agnostic to channel is truly key. And so if you're, like I said, sending out outbound messages or responding to text, that should feel very much the same as you would be experiencing the brand in email. So offers should be somewhat similar. You should have the same somewhat experience on the site or in other channels, and just extending the overall customer experience, leveraging SMS as a tool more than it is necessarily competitive to the other channels.
That's great. Thank you very much. As we saw off the top, roughly a quarter of the folks who joined us today seem to be relatively new to SMS, wanting to learn more about it. What advice, starting with you, Jess, would you give to a marketer to convince them that investing in SMS as a key marketing channel really is the right play and it really is important?
Yeah, definitely. I would tell them that consumers are on their smartphone more than they are on desktop, laptop, their tablet. And it's so important for brands to meet their customers where they are. It's estimated that there's a 98% open rate within the first 5 minutes of receiving an SMS message. So pair that with optimized language or relevant personalized language, and there's a massive opportunity there.
Yeah, I would mimic what Jeff said in terms of speaking to customers where they are, right? I mean, they're on their phones all day, or at least apparently all day. It would make sense to communicate to them in that channel. So I think that totally makes sense to keep that as part of the whole, but also look at SMS as a vehicle into communicating in a new way. So if you're not doing SMS today, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should start bombarding SMS outbound messages as your practice. You need to understand the customer's reaction, learn and look at their preferences, and really honor how they want to be communicated to. And SMS is just another way of kind of speaking to them where they are and how they want to be spoken to.
How would you advise somebody in that situation to get started? Like, should they start? I mean, you've talked a bit strategically around making sure they understand the customer and making sure the voice is right. Are there certain types of campaigns, certain types of communications that you would recommend beginning with for SMS? Do you view it? Are you looking strategically to tie it in, or how are you looking to strategically to tie it into other channel messaging? Richard, what would you advise there?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of success, and like I mentioned, in like that event or transactional type use case where you've got an upcoming appointment or a follow-up to that appointment, because it's all centered around this concept of timing. So if there's a stair-stepper way of getting into the channel, I would say let's leverage customer activity to dictate maybe when to communicate. And then if you're in an organization trying to build out customer profiles, then maybe a conversational type SMS program makes sense to get more information from the customer, provide surveys, kind of polls, if you will. If it's more of an outbound kind of business is the one driving the timing, then a text to join or kind of trialing out some programs in certain vicinities may make sense. So I think depending on the use case or the outcome you're trying to drive, either a kind of timely or time-driven based program versus an outbound program may make sense, and vice versa.
Jess, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to Phrasee, what we typically recommend is start with those larger campaigns, right? What are those SMS programs that you have that are going to large audiences that you already see a decent amount of engagement with? Because the more results and data that you get back, the faster that you learn, and then the faster you can adjust and make sure a campaign is going to be super successful. Something else that we typically, that works really nicely with Phrasee is we do have our clients that typically start out optimizing language for email, which means that we already have those learnings from email, and we can just pivot that right to SMS. Because if you think about the fact brand guidelines should remain the same, tone of voice should remain the same. So, we do pivot that language model to adapt for SMS. What are those guidelines that we have to adhere to, both from character count, technological, requirements of, how many variants we can test. But we take that all into consideration, but we never want to, we always want to leverage the learnings that we already have. So if we already know how your customers engage with email, that's a great starting point of the types of language that your customers like, dislike, and then we can go from there.
Let's dive in a little bit to some of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what you guys have seen in your considerable experience in this space. Well, let's start with the good. Can you maybe provide a few examples of personalization in SMS that you've seen be really that you're either a customer has done that you're really proud of, or you've been on the receiving end that you think, wow, these guys really got it right? Jess, any that come to mind?
Yeah, I would say in terms of current customers, those personalized promotional codes do really well, right? And that's kind of what I referenced before of providing your customers with a relevant discount promotion, but making it as easy for them as possible. So, the promotional code is embedded in this link, so you don't have to go through that extra step of adding it in. You click through, you basically can purchase. I would say personally, one retailer that I have started to follow, they took that step of, within SMS asking, save this number, right, with our retailer name, and they made it really quick to do that. So now when I receive SMS from them, it's not this random number that it's kind of a guessing game of who's reaching out to me. I know it. It's almost like a friend or family member is texting me. I know it right away, and I know what to expect.
Yep,
Richard, how about you?
a couple examples, one more on the B2C side versus the other, but I think to Jess's point, the personalized offer promotion code makes sense, especially if it's partnered with some sort of like media or asset that is kind of following along with the promotion. So if you're pushing out an offer with a personalized code, maybe an image of, whatever the product is, maybe a good accompaniment to kind of reinforce the brand knows what you're potentially looking for, but then that we know the customer, right? And that we're providing not only something personalized for them, but also, some sort of media asset that would be kind of in parallel with maybe email or push or some other channel, but providing that creative aspect as well. And then second, kind of more of a B2B play, we've seen some customers use SMS as a kind of knowledge base. So if you're out in the field, agents can text in certain things to get information about, vicinities or, things that are pertinent to certain geographical locations. So while outbound messaging is definitely critical and a key component to SMS, having a robust catalog or library of content to make that more of a conversational element, I think has provided a lot of benefit, especially in like a distributed kind of ecosystem where you've got, agents or field reps out in the field and have a way to get information at their fingertips.
Cool. Before we continue on, I just want to remind everybody to feel free to send us your questions. Just use the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. We've got some already coming in. I'm going to start passing those out to everybody here on the panel in a minute, but would love to get as many questions as you all have, and happy to answer as many as we can. All right, so let's get to, we've talked about some really great examples. I think that begs the question of what hasn't gone so well. Are there, rather than saying this, this campaign wasn't good, maybe just, are there specific pitfalls? And again, thinking a lot of the folks who are new to this, but really not just for them, that you would warn people about. What should they try to avoid when it comes to SMS? Richard, you want to go take a first stab at that?
I would say sometimes too much is too much. The channel, as we've mentioned previously, sits next to personal messages and family and friends. And so bombarding, customers in that channel, I think will pose a negative impact for sure. And then we talked about timeliness as well. Getting an SMS at 3 in the morning is definitely frowned upon. So understanding, when the right time is, and also understanding what the right volume or quantity is, I think are two main things that I would hedge against to make sure that you're not saturating what could be a very, lucrative channel if played well.
Jess?
Yeah, agree with all of that. The other thing I would say is you have to know your goals before deciding on who your technical partner is. Is your goal going to be to measure clicks? Is it going to be to measure conversions? Do you want to do testing? Do you want to do multivariate testing, or do you just want to be able to do A/B testing? And you need to ensure that the partner that you choose can allow you to run the tests that you want to test and provide you the metrics that you need, right, to define success. So aligning with that appropriate technical partner is huge. And talk to your friends, talk to other brands that are doing really well in SMS. Understand the positives and negatives from them. Reach out to any of your technical partners to get their recommendations. But if you choose a partner that can't give you what you need, it's really hard to have that ultimate success.
So this is great. We've talked a bit about not bombarding customers. I think, Richard, you talked a little bit about that. We've actually got a question that came in from somebody in the audience. How do you maintain SMS governance across your organization, and how do you gauge if you've really started bombarding people?
So assuming the question means that there's multiple senders in your enterprise that are leveraging a similar list, I think, that's the tried and true problem even with email, right? With air traffic control and all the different business stakeholders. I would say, pick a number, right? Let's say arbitrarily like one a week, and then gauge response, right? Is Are your clicks declining? Are you getting the activity that you expected? And every list and business is going to have different metrics that will be successful for them. So I would say listen to the responses is going to be the key metric in understanding if you're sending too much or too little. But again, understanding the events that warrant an SMS and those kind of categorical reasons for sending, I think those marry together well to understand what's the right volume, which could change over time and also have a seasonality impact as well.
Jess, we've got another question in here. You talked earlier about being able to save the number. And there's a question around how do you do that? Is there a link in a message that you send, or does the user on the other end have to enter that contact manually?
Oh, oh my God, I wish I could think back to the exact process. It was definitely something that made it really easy. I think it was like a link to save contact. And I literally basically just had to hit save. And it, I mean, has made such a world of difference, because every time I get a text message from an unknown number, my first thought is, okay, what is this going to be? Is it going to be spam? Is it going to be, you kind of have that hesitation right away. Whereas if you know exactly what it's coming from, you know what to expect, right? And especially if it's a brand that you're engaged with, right? And that's typically why you're getting SMS messages from them. You go in with like a whole different mindset.
Okay. Trying to draw some comparisons between the worlds of email and SMS. In the world of email, you might centralize all your marketing campaigns across, your total audience base, and then you're dealing with different ISPs and domains and how people are receiving that message. In the world of SMS, you're dealing with carriers, and that almost seems like maybe a little bit more black box and a little bit less in control for the marketer. Is that a fair characterization? And leading to the question that was asked from the audience, how do you prevent your text from being blocked by the carriers?
And so, I mean, standard good practice is standard good practice, right? So understanding the responses you're getting and making sure your list stays clean is probably is top of mind. With SMS specifically, we've had some success separating like outbound marketing with a short code versus more transactional, responsive on long codes to keep things somewhat separated. So getting an appointment reminder from your dentist in a zip code that is, or area code that is near you, is a lot more straightforward than maybe a short code sending to every patient that's in the list, for instance. So obviously it depends on your business on what makes sense, but we've had some success kind of separating a promotional from maybe transactional or event-based triggered SMS messages, and then procuring short and long codes accordingly based on the overall strategy that we were trying to achieve for that particular engagement.
Yeah, and I would say from a Phrasee standpoint, the knowledge of what is going to be okay and not be okay, how do we land in those inboxes is typically worked out between our clients and their provider, but that feeds over to us and we build that into our language model, whatever it is. If we have to make sure that we have to be within certain limits, all of that is built out, so everything will stay within those guidelines. And I mean, from a language standpoint, nothing inappropriate from a language standpoint will ever come out of the Phrasee platform.
So we've talked a bit about not sort of over messaging within the SMS channel itself. There's a question here around, let's say I'm a brand and I've got, a robust email campaign. I've got a mobile app with messaging, in-app messaging, push messaging. Is there room for SMS? Is there such a thing as being too much noise? I would think, from my perspective, from a MessageGears perspective, this would lend itself well to the idea of cross-channel campaign management, cross-channel orchestration, and assuming that's the case, Richard, how do you advise customers to be, aware of that cross-channel approach and not over messaging across multiple channels? It's easier to kind of put the regulator on a single channel, but how do you advise doing that across three?
Yeah, so the base answer, which is probably tried and true is preference center, right? We give the customer the ability to decide how and when they get communicated and what, what are the purposes for the messages. I think each channel has its own benefits that you need to weigh in against each particular campaign, right? Is the medium for this better in email versus SMS, push, et cetera? So I think each campaign warrants that kind of deciding factor. But overall, customer fatigue can be experienced across all the channels, in my opinion, right? So whether they're visiting your location less frequently, or they're no longer opening emails, all of that are all factors that I think need to be taken into account in your overall kind of marketability, if you will, strategy. We talked, recently about kind of the iOS changes and all the engagement that we're just being inundated with. I think it ultimately, you need to look at your entire data footprint, understand how can I kind of measure interactivity of a customer in all the various touch points that I may have, and then use that as a weighted scale to say, all right, I need to beef up my email, or I need to reduce my SMS, or whatever the case may be. But I think all data, agnostic of whether it's outbound marketing data or inbound visit data, et cetera, need to be used to catalog what's the right timing, frequency, and to send out messages agnostic of channel.
Jess, anything you would add there?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say we would never say, okay, always use SMS over another channel, right? It goes back to meeting your customers where they are. So, if you have, a group of your customers that have your app downloaded and they're, really engaged, well, that's the place that you should be messaging them. What's nice about SMS is you don't have that barrier of needing an app downloaded, right? And you can be driven to any relevant website, right? So you have to think about both your audience and where they're engaging, but also what is your end goal and what makes the most sense to get there.
Okay. Another question here from someone who says they're new to SMS. How do you verify a customer's identity over time? Right, it's a little different from email. I mean, somebody may change email addresses, but it's rare that somebody picks up that old email address, whereas phone numbers could theoretically be recycled. So if a customer opts into SMS from a phone number, a year ago, and then a few months later, they get a new phone number, the brand themselves isn't necessarily ever notified of that. How do you manage that?
So there is and I'm drawing a blank on the duration, but there is a blackout period between when numbers are changed from customer A to B. So there should be data that is generated from the carriers that is, this is no longer valid or whatnot. But in that same blackout period, you would see a change in behavior on whether it's the clicks or other activity that is generated from that channel. So I think paying close attention to what you're asking the customer to do via that channel and a change in behavior is one that I would, keep an eye on whether or not that phone number is still valid or associated with that customer. Oftentimes we see, clients change providers, and they'll do a kind of hello, goodbye type message to say we have a new short code or something along those lines. I think those are opportunities to kind of re-energize or reinvigorate a number that maybe you're not seeing activity on, and kind of reestablish some of that population. And then, in other sort of identity matching capabilities where you've got a profile and you send out a number to get validated, and those types of exercises, I think are warranted, especially if you've got some sort of program, loyalty program, membership type thing where you're kind of reestablishing identity, over the course of the lifetime of the membership. But I think those are ways that you can kind of mitigate phone, either retirement or numbers that are changing over the course of your program.
Yeah, to add on, I actually there is a retailer that I have an account with, and every time you log in, immediately it has all of your personal information, gives you the option of updating if needing, or just hitting save and continue, right? So I think it's important for brands to, relatively consistently confirm personal details, make sure, everything is still correct. because people move, people change phones, all of that stuff. You don't want things to ship to the wrong address, or SMS start going to a new person.
Great. Well, we're a good half hour into it. I appreciate everybody's participation. For those of you who are out there in the audience and still have questions, representatives will absolutely follow up with you and make sure that we get any and all further questions answered. I think we've had a great conversation, and I want to once again thank Richard and Jess for coming out today and talking to everybody about SMS. Hope for all of you this has been very useful, very beneficial, and a good use of your time, and you've learned a little something. And obviously, on behalf of MessageGears, and I know speaking for Ansira and Phrasee, we would love to hear from you. And if you have any further questions and how we can help, just guide your strategies. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.